Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate, episode 63, the tournament future for X-Wing and list building with our good friends. Tonight, we're going to be having a conversation about X and 1 tournaments, kind of the different prize support for tournaments, what the difference is between Gen Con and Adepticon tournament-wise are, and maybe offer up a little bit of suggestions for what we could do to make a change inside of the tournament community. We're also going to be talking a little bit about list building. We want to discuss kind of how to build a list. Where do you want to go for it? What's your favorite type of list building? And give you kind of a overview of where you can go for list building purposes. Tonight, joining me will be my good friend JJ, as well as our guest host tonight, Cory Heald, from our local X-Wing community, Brew Squadron. Why don't we go ahead and bring everybody in? Maybe bring everybody in. Do I have the wrong one? I have the wrong one. There we go. Bringing in the right scene with the right guys tonight. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hey.
How's everybody's night so far?
Mine's pretty good. I cleaned out my son's old room a little bit since he never did. Ended up getting a bunch of free X-Wing stuff. So I guess there's that.
Nice. Yeah. For me, I'm buckling or been buckling down in the middle of the move now. As you can see behind me, what used to be filled with all my board games is now completely gone. I have a random mug that I had here for apparently the last decade here for Carnage that I found, and I'm like, I don't know, I should get rid of it, but yeah, apparently I have I filled about 10 boxes, medium-sized boxes full of board games that I own, and that's that I sold quite a bit of it a while back. But yeah, it's just so much that you accumulate over 10 years of living in the same space, and yeah, I'm just trying to get all that done and packed. I got about 10 days before I got to go, so it's crunch time for us here. So,
nice. Fun. Have you got your job situation and everything all set for when you land?
Still in progress right now, but hopefully it should be resolved by the time I'm there. So yeah,
awesome. Cory, how was your weekend?
Been busy getting some work. I'm doing a weird job for a museum, actually, where we're taking photos of a artifact from King Ramsey and making a 3D model and video and all that stuff from it. So it's kind of a fun little side project. And then I just spent the rest of the day unpacking from Gen Con and getting ready for Monday. So, and I just saw Prey today. The Predator movie.
Oh yeah, I've been wanting to watch that. How is it?
It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't walk away like, wow, that was, those stupid moments and stuff. I enjoyed it as a great movie. Being free on Hulu was even better. But I'm a huge Predator fan, so yeah. Even though I don't like most of the movies, so.
Have you ever played? I know this is not Predator, but it's the same vein. Like it's an alien game called, God, I can't remember the name of it now. It's the big box Nemesis. There you go. Have you ever played Nemesis?
Once during Dice Tower Con. I only got introduced to it briefly, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so Cory, I will have to plan a day at the shop that I bring that, and like a day that we're only gonna have a few people, right? And it's essentially what it is you're trapped on this ship, right? And you got to you can't wake the aliens up, and every time you move, you get more, you make noise, kind of like you do in, the show. And if it spawns an alien, you either got to fight it or run away, and then you get little different mission codes. The idea is it's supposed to be a co-op game, right? So you're going to be cooperative with each other. But you also have your own little missions, and so sometimes you get a side mission that says eliminate player 3 to win. And the only way to win is to actually eliminate player 3. So you have to play the whole game in covert, and then you have to figure out how to eliminate player 3 at some point.
Nice.
It is insanely hard. You almost never win the game. I think we've played it maybe 10 to 12 times, and we've won 2 or 3 times, and that's it. So,
yeah.
One time I held everybody hostage because they were going to leave me on the base behind. So I basically said, if you guys get an escape crafts, which you can do to get out of there, I'm just gonna go hit the self-destruct button and blow you up. So anyway, it's a great game. I think it's kind of fun. And it has like the element of teamwork with screwing somebody over as well. So.
I like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, for tonight, before we get into, I want to talk about list building and I want to talk about tournament prep, or not prep, but tournament discussion, right? And specifically the reason we have Cory on is for two reasons, right? One, Cory is actually a game designer, so Cory understands and has maybe a little bit more inside knowledge than your average person when it comes to dissecting a game apart. And so I think that they delves into two different arenas. One, he has the ability to help people get through and understand what is the audience around, right? Because that's his goal. He's working towards that when he starts building these different games out. And then also because of the fact that Cory loves to list build. So there's that piece of it too. Cory is the list builder in our group. So if you tell Cory you need a list, and in our Discord, he will spend 10 hours building lists for you, and then he'll send them all to you and expect you to play them all and tell him which one is best. That's what he will do. But
True.
As a game designer, I think that kind of lends to Cory's creativity piece of it. And so when Cory builds you a list, it's going to give you something that's a little bit more creative. I'm not an overly creative list builder. I can tweak built lists that people give me or tweak meta lists and understand how that process works. But I'm not the guy that goes and discovers the brand new list. Typically that's not me. So anyway, with that being said, before we get into that though, I thought I'd do this like neat little intro, right? Like they're trying to do something different, like to break the show up. And one of the things I thought we would do is say, if you could design a card, what would it be, right? And I'm not just gonna say a card of any type that we have exist. If you could design a new card type, like put something in there. So like instead of a talent, maybe it is a I don't know, like a new type of like bomb dropping shoot or something like that. So what I wanted to do is, and I thought that would be kind of fun, is if you could do that, how would you build it? What would you put around it? What would be something that could be like a new interesting mechanic? And it could be related to anything within the game. So they're laying the presents out for that.
So I think something that it hasn't really been touched as much and was briefly explored is something similar that the CIS has with their tactical droids. I think that there need to be commander upgrades for squadrons across the factions. This opens up to having specific crew that you can pay points for, similar to like the tac droids that can give a benefit to the to that squad for what they can do. Something similar, like for instance, like bringing back or taking Leia out of the crew slot and bringing her as a commander for the rebels, for instance, will be a nice change like that, because she can lead the squadron as like the commander type figure like that. Or same thing with the Empire and all their moffs, or Thrawn, for instance, would be a fantastic commander to have for the Empire. That would be something really great, and something that could be explored as an extra option there. I know that we have something similar like that already in Epic, but I think that it is good enough to see that come into standard play as an option for list building. Something that's not mandatory, but it would be nice to add add another dimension to the game.
So cool. For example, it could be something where that you could activate 2 ships at once.
Yeah, something like that, or like or treat during the activation phase, they treat their initiative the same as another ship, or the ship that the commander's on, like activate at the same time. Like that would be something that like an effect that could be a commander effect.
How about this? Wouldn't this be amazing? This brings back Destiny stuff, right? Thanks for the subscribe, Nickel City. This brings back Destiny stuff. There's this card that basically lets you activate multiple characters at the same time. And it's like an ambush action. So that would be like what this is. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and activate my Covenel, and it's going to have my Leia character on it, and activate all other T75 or T70s at the exact same time. And then you just be able to activate all like 3 of your other ships. That would be amazing. I don't know. I like it. I like it, JJ.
Yeah.
Creative.
So
Cory.
just going off of that, just to throw some ideas, because I have a board game design that has like a team leader. Something that could be interesting to go off of that is, instead of it being a card that's on a ship, is actually a card that you have separate, which is your ground crew or your command crew, not that's on the battle, but that's back at the base. So you could kind of get the idea of having your abilities that you could do maybe with charges or whatever, getting intel, getting information from your wherever the base is, in a sense, right? So it doesn't have to be a crew card. You don't have to mess with what you've got. You just get new abilities that kind of get added to that with like a commander that's not in the battle currently, but on the ground or on a ship somewhere far away.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So it'd be something like, it could be, you could have something where we would pretend they're on a capital ship or something like that, and
Yep.
they authorize some sort of a code.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. I think that would be very fun too.
So my big thing that I would love to see, and probably it'd be a 3.0 thing or whatever, but I like the idea, you always hear about it in all the movies and books and stuff like that, is diverting power from one thing to another. And I know it would complicate things, but I love the idea. Like, the idea of reinforce, I think, is a really cool concept, because you can outmaneuver it. You've got all these different things. Having ships be able to shift power around so that you lose something and gain something. So think of it like your S foils on a T70, that you've got modes of how to flip your cards. And ships just have different options, and you can be in this or this mode: more offense, more defense, or more speed, or maybe more coordinating kind of support, right? So you've got your 4 different key aspects of the game. So being able to have a shift in a ship from one thing to another, and they get only 2, but you can kind of adjust them a little bit, I think would be pretty neat.
I actually like that idea. I think that you can actually implement that with existing tokens that we have, like taking the plate tokens to shift your power from your cannons to something else.
Yep.
Or like taking a strain, shifting your power from your engines to get a better attack or something like that. I think that's something that could be worked as a game design mechanic for certain ships. Yeah.
And even if it's a one-off thing of, you take a deplete to gain a temporary extra die for 1 round, right? For 1 shot. So it's kind of a 1-for-1 type thing. I think would be kind of cool to simulate the idea of moving your power around in your ships, so.
Yeah, and I think if we talk about squadrons, right? If you look at squadrons, in squadrons you can actually do that, right? I can move my power from one to be able to go faster or slower, for that. And I think that would be kind of neat. You could almost, like, if you look at it like an Armada piece, right? You could almost have like a separate dial piece to it, right? That you could say, this is what I'm going to divert, or this is what I'm going to do, and then based on that, it would go through and it would go through and do it each different way. So I think that's really neat. I kind of like that a lot, and I think that would be something. I think that's something they could implement in 2.6 or whatever we're calling this now. So I am not on the same page that I think 3.0 is around the corner. I feel 3.0 is like a good 5 years away, maybe 4.
Yeah, I agree. It's not around the corner. I was just saying that I to balance it, it may take that in order to get that kind of customization. But yeah. And the other thing I would just throw out there, I still wish we had more ship variants. So like you have 7 Delta 7, 7B. Like I think the Y-wing should be this and that. I'd like to have the different model types of a ship, and I think that would be something I would like to see more of as well.
Get new configs.
Was that?
Like new configuration sites.
Yeah. And just really spread it out in the ships to give you a lot more to do with your models. I think would be really, really cool, especially if you like a ship to kind of customize it. So
Yeah, think about it this way. If you did that, you don't have to print a bunch of new ships. We own quite a few ships. I won't lie and say there's certain ships I would like to see, and I would like another faction, honestly. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't do that. Like what you're saying, we couldn't do that with that feature because, and again, you could take X-wings are a great example of that. Because X-wings were all flown completely different. And think about if you had a way to fly, and I guess I'm picking on Resistance probably because you're here. But if I was able to fly my Resistance X-Wings and have a configuration instead of S-foils, I had a configuration that allowed me to be more like an actual swarm, right? Or more of an in-sync. And I think of Epic, too, when you kind of do some of those things and you can put them in squads and fly them together. Not that I want to do that with X-Wing, because that puts a lot of extra ships on the table I don't want to see. But it would still be cool to do some sort of a config. So if you had two of them that were the same, that they could get a bonus if they both flew together in a squad set.
Yeah.
My big one is like the lat. I think of it. There's the Samurai Jack style Clone Wars cartoon, and they have this lat that just wrecks everything. Right? It's
Yeah. That's like my favorite episode in that series, man.
Yeah, and it's so awesome. And I'm like, just give me a gunship version of the lat instead of the wussy support version that most of the time it is. Give me some blue turns, banks and a 3-die turret and take away fire convergence. I'd still fly the thing.
Yeah.
It
could even be like an ARC Trooper configuration that can come out for the lat, which increases its attack value and make it more aggressive and a lot less of a support type ship.
Yeah.
I would definitely be on board with that. That'd be great.
They even drop bombs with the things out of the cartoon.
Yeah,
so
right.
Like that'd be pretty sweet to have this like gunship that's not a support ship, and it give Republic a whole nother ship using the same chassis.
Yeah.
So kind of in line with that, what I had thought about doing would be it would be a whole new card type. And what it would essentially be is a category that can be used throughout every faction. I don't know what we would call it specifically, but what it would do is contain mini missions, right? And you would have these mini plot points that you would pay points for. So think of it like an illicit, except for it's going to have a little plot card which could say, and this is something that will trigger throughout the game. And again, I apologize because I come from Star Wars Destiny and they introduced plots, and plots, in my opinion, were one of the big things that I felt was going to be like a huge benefit to that game. So maybe we're going to call them plots just because that's my jam. But what you could do is you could do a lot of different things. You could offer discounts if you create thematic pieces. So think of it this way: if I fly like Luke, Leia, and Han or whatever all together somehow, I could get either a set of loadout points or I could get a discount on one of my ships or something like that. Then you could have a plot that would basically say, if collect X amount of objective points within the first 3 rounds, and if you do, you could get this bonus. You could take a bonus upgrade shot, or you could there could be one where you could actually recharge one of your non-reconfigurable charges or something like that. So, but creating little mini missions that you could complete that would be part of the game. They will not be something that you would accumulate, time over time over time, but it would be something that would be a unique little card set that could fly in any different faction, and then you can make faction unique ones. And again, I point out, again, it would be fun to fly, Luke, Leia, Han together at some point, right? Like, I don't think we can right now. But, it would say, hey, you get the discount. We need more objectives. I disagree with that. We need more. These are not even objective pieces. These are just like bonus points and ways for you to be able to do different things. Like, and again, if you want to run Luke, Leia, and Han together, right, you can discount it so that they equal 20 points. And then what you could do inside of there is say each one loses X amount of loadout. Or what you could do is eradicate all loadout points for them and then give them a pool of combined loadout points that is less than what they would normally have. So I think normally they would have what, I don't know, like they have like 60 together, all 3 of those, don't they? I think they have 60 altogether. So you could just drop it down and say loadout value for all of these ships would equal, 25 or 30 loadout points. And they could be shared across all of them for it.
I think the other thing that I would like to see is particularly on large ships is just more something similar to like the Nashapop, right? The ability to eject your pilot or even crew members over onto other ships that are nearby within a certain range. I think that would be something that'll be kind of cool to see. When a ship is going down, you just do like an emergency deploy for that particular ship or crew, and another ship that has a crew slot can pick it up. That'll be something thematic, I would say.
That's cool.
Here, let me hand off my salvage crate. There you go. That's I like that. Let's hand off that salvage crate. Like, oh, I no longer want to carry this. Somebody else can.
JJ, something else that could be cool is if you did have escape pods, you had to get those off to your side, off your edge of the board when a ship does go. If you don't, then the other side can grab them, and that could be a different objective type thing where you have escape pods when a ship blows up, and you have to get them to your side before the enemy snatches them or destroys them, right? That'd be kind of a cool thing. So
awesome. All right, so why don't we move into tournament discussion, because this is actually probably what our group was talking about a little bit, and Cory got to hear the brunt of my my dislike of the new format. So the tournament format for Gen Con, and we are going to talk prize support too, because as much as AMG actually stepped in this time, prize support was, we'll just put it this way, Dion, they should just hire Dion. Somebody should just pay Dion money to do this type of stuff for them. Like I don't know what they're spending on all these other events, but somebody should just hire Dion because at least he has an understanding of what the community wants. But I don't know. Anyway, the prize support was insanely bad. So we will get to that, but that is not the biggest gripe that I have. And normally we call this a system malfunction, but I want to have a more well-rounded discussion about this. I don't want to just go on a rant for an hour and not get to anything else. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to make some recommendations, I think, of how we feel it would fix it. So if you're friends with somebody from AMG and you want to share this portion of the podcast, we'll even not swear, so you can share it with AMG.
Can you do that, Chris?
Yes.
He's going to be sweating. All
right. If I swear, if I say anything that puts us over the PG-13 rating, I will gift a sub to somebody's channel of choice. There you go.
At least he's wearing pants, so no swearing, and he's got pants. So
I do have pants on. Yes. Anyway, but so let's go to the tournament format. So the big thing, the two things that AMG wanted to dictate, one did not happen, the other one did, was X and 1. And the second thing that they wanted to do was fuck you 3-1. But damn it. All right. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Nick. You got one.
You know what? That goes right to Nick. Just all for that. Yeah.
I guess I'm subbing to your channel after this, Nick. I don't know. I might already be subbed to your channel. I'll have to gift a sub to somebody. All right. We can edit that piece out. So they determined they want to do X and 1, which again, I will say at first I was on board for. If you watch the show consistently, I openly stated that that I had been very pro that. The other thing that they wanted to do was run a 6 rounds tournament, even though they were only having 64 people, and that was a big thing for them until I think they got in person and determined there was not enough people to run a 6 round tournament. So why don't we start there? And I don't know, I will not be the first one. I will not be the first one. We'll let one of the two of you want to go and talk a little bit about your thoughts on AX and 1 style tournaments, and then we'll go from there and kind of into the other piece that I mentioned.
Sure. So I'll start off with this one there. So I think that the X and 1 style format for making cuts is okay in certain types of events. When you're dealing with local store championships, that's fine. Or even like a store championship as well. I'm sorry, I just repeated that twice. Basically, anything that does not have to be aligned with like getting a world's invite, um, probably shouldn't go that format because ideally, if you're running like a local store championship or team type championship, then just to kind of reduce the amount of rounds that can possibly happen in the cut, it's a much easier way to format it to that particular structure. And for those types of events, that's okay. But when it comes to getting world's invites, especially if you've publicly advocated that you want to open up the gates to allow more players to get access to worlds, I think that going the X1 route is definitely not the way to go. I think that even if you're trying to limit yourself to have only 5 rounds, which is what Gen Con did end up having, which was 5 rounds, you still should do a top 32 cut or even 64, just depending on the time constraints they have for that event, and of course player attendance for that event. It's just a little more fairer that way, for more people to have the opportunity to go in and have that access.
Cory.
Whew. I'll have to curb this a little bit. It's talk too much, but I'll start by saying when I first got into X-Wing, I went to Adepticon and went before all this. This is 1.0. And my biggest tournament I went to was Adepticon, and it was amazing to go there. And I felt like as I was playing, I constantly was like, where are my standings? Where am I going? And it kept me playing. I was playing throughout the whole tournament as long as I could until, I lost 3 times or something like that or whatever it was. Recently, I just went to Gen Con, and I will honestly say Gen Con was the worst experience I've ever had at a major competition in all my X-Wing playing. It's been, I don't know how many years. I won my first one, lost my second one, and then the third one, it was a close one and lost it. And after that, we were just like, there's no point in me being here. I thankfully, full transparency, my ticket was taken care of because I was helping out with a booth, and my room and board was. But if I would have paid all that money to be there for that experience and realized that after that I'm done and I have no prizes, I have nothing to draw me to keep me playing, that was just awful. And I felt that way having my room and board paid for, and having my ticket taken care of. I can't imagine somebody who took the time to travel and get there and paid that and had to deal with that, because that would be awful. I've heard the thing about people saying, "Hey," people saying, "Hey, it feels bad if you just missed it because you couldn't control your schedule. You couldn't control your opponents and what they did." My opinion, that's BS, because it feels worse to just be like, you're just completely shut out. You have no chance. You're just done. I'd rather wait to the end of the day and feel like I fought and played, and maybe I pulled off some crazy wins, and I put myself up and higher in the ranks and had a good time doing it. And there was a reason for everybody to stay, versus going in and saying, all right, I'm done. There's no point in me playing anymore. And there's no prizes to even work for. It was awful. It just literally was like, I just was like, this is miserable feeling, in my opinion. And the other thing of it I've heard, and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, but I don't care if it makes it easier for the tournament organizers to do X and 1. That's not what this is about. This is about people, the players, going to have a good time at an event. If you're putting on an event, you should be prepared to take care of the players and to give them the best experience they can. I don't want to hear this is easier for us. To me, that's BS. You give us the best experience you can, and that means as many people as possible into cuts, into getting prizes, feeling like you can keep playing. This whole thing of the top is all that gets to enjoy it. That's crap. they already have more prizes than they know what to do with, most of those people, and they half of them throw the stuff in a box and run away anyways. Like, they don't care. So yeah, it was. I'm still salty. I didn't spew out as much as what Chris did, but I'm still salty with Gen Con. Like, really, like I was like, I don't even know if I want to go to any major tournaments anymore. I got more prize support out of going to the East Side in Detroit with some guys that put on an event. I had a great time. I got more prizes. I had more of a chance of staying in it. And that shouldn't happen at a major event.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, I don't have very good things to say about how the tournament was presented at Gen Con. I will say I think that the streaming was great. I don't have an issue at all with how they handled the streaming. I will say that D was actually very excitable and very fun to be around. So I was a little surprised because on his podcast he seemed a little salty and he seemed pretty worn out lately. But he came as a judge with renewed energy. He made jokes, I don't know, all the time. And hey, D, if you want to join the podcast, you're welcome to join. We could actually have a 4-in-1 discussion or X-in-1 discussion too. But for the tournament format, you know, D did very well judging this time, right? So really my gripe is not with the people that handled the tournament. My gripe is with the prizing, which we're going to get to in a few minutes. I agree. The prizing is a whole different discussion. And Cory is right. They went to this thing on the East Side. They got Gar Saxon lock tokens or something like that. And it's like, where in God's green earth did you get these? And it's like, oh, we got these because we went to the East Side to like this 12-person tournament. I'm like, God damn it, why didn't I go to that? You know, like, I want Gar Saxon lock tokens. Those are cool. And they were metal. They were like metal tokens. They're not even like cheap cardboard or anything. They were really cool type tokens that we had that they had. So it's not like you were getting, you know, a cardboard cutout of Guri that we can't even fucking fly. Oh, there you go. I slipped up twice now. So it's official. I have to donate a sub to somebody. So and I agree, Cory, I agree 100%. This has to be about the players because the players are the people that are coming here to work the circuit, right? You know, there's people that are going to multiple events, working the circuit to some extent to get a Worlds invite. So we could talk about the Worlds invite piece in a second, which I will 100% shame AMG outright. I just I'm sorry, like that the way they did Worlds invites, and I don't care. Like I will complain until the day's end because if you have a Worlds with just like 50 people in it, is that really a Worlds tournament? Right? If you have a Worlds with 100 people in it, is that a Worlds tournament? Give me a Worlds with 300-400 people. And I say this very selfishly, but at the exact same time as somebody that understands on a business side, when you limit these interactions and these things to 50, 60, 70 people, you know what you're doing? You're cutting out cash. You're cutting out cash. You have made a statement of when we're going to have a Worlds. You have made that statement. So if let's just say there is 5,000 X-Wing players, you should be striving for 5 to 10% of those to get into a Worlds. You should not be looking at 1%. And I think personally, I feel 5,000 is a conservative estimate of how many people play competitive X-Wing. But I'm new to the community, so I will just I don't know that as a factual number. But based on what I've seen and what I see on the online tournament circuit, excuse me, worldwide, we probably easily have a good 10 to 15,000 people that play, right? And why are we not working towards bringing these people into a tournament to give their bloody money to somebody else, that somebody else could just take this money and earn and use it to make a better game?
Yeah.
So that's my feel about why I disagree with it. The X-in-1 just limits that. In the chat earlier, Greg pointed out that in certain cut factions, and when you don't have to have top cut and all these other things, X-in-1 can be fine. And I'm going to use an example. Brendan, the guy I went with, went 3-2. I went 3-2. I was top 8 of that day, right? Which I think overall I ended up top 24th or something like that. So the cut only went to 22. And if they had brought in at least top 10 of every day, to have a top cut of 30, give 2 people the buy, you would immediately have more people in cut. Now, again, you're only playing for 4 Worlds invites, but wouldn't it be fun, instead of having a bunch of people with buys, that we all had to be there at 7 a.m., tired, hungover, angry, yelling at each other? Wouldn't that be more fun for us to I like sleeping in, but I would have gotten up, and so would have Brendan. You know? I don't know. It's like, to me, it just feels like a little bit better a feel to get more people to feel like they're being valued. Because again, the Duncan Howards of the world, the Nathan Ides, you know, the Nick Sperry's, whatever, the you know, the Will Hagwoods, they're still gonna win, right? They're still gonna, I'm still gonna get eliminated turn 1. But guess what? I'm here now. I'm here. If there had been side events, I would have walked right over and picked up a side event and played instantaneously.
Yeah.
Instead, I slept in. I got it's Indiana, so I got drunk the night before and slept in. And that's what Brendan and I did. We just slept in. We played Dice Thrones with Cory. We slept in and did not get up because we had no interest in being there early. Whereas if I had been in cut, or more people had been in cut, I would have stuck around and sat there and cheered people on and watched and done all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a look at Adepticon, I mean, there was all sorts of side events that was available to all the different players, even if you didn't make cut, and there was prize support to back that up as well. And you can easily sign up, and you know, by not offering those choices there to attract more players to come and play those particular events, even casual players. You know, you're limiting the potential that you can expose your game out to newer and casual players who would want to go there just to participate for those events, to get that prize support, to make it feel like it was worth something and make them want to come back in the future to come participate in those events again. Like I remember, you know, I did pretty terrible at Adepticon, but I had a great time playing Aces High, the warm-up tournament, the redemption tournament that we had after during cut. That was a lot of fun, and I was able to play a different list, you know, and play with different people there, and played some of the people that I already played in the previous tournament, and we just had a blast. You know, it was low pressure, and we got a lot of great support that Gold Squadron and AMG had supplied to them as well for that event. And it was a lot of fun, and it reduced that amount of feels bad, and made me want to come back and do that type of event again. And that actually is what inspired our event for Pine Phase Syndicate when we had it back in July. I wanted to use that same format and make sure that everybody from the lower table to the high table went away with something, even though it was a low card or an up custom card or something, so that way they didn't leave the event empty-handed. You know, they felt that they gained something that day, even if they didn't make like the top.
Yeah.
Think about it this way: if redemption events were there, if we're all playing on Saturday anyway, or on that weekend, and there was a redemption event that had Worlds invites, how many people do you think would be playing that next day?
A ton. Even
if it was only 2.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, Cory would have had me up at. He would have been over at my. He'd have been texting me like, "You're getting up. We're gonna go for those World invites. Come on, we got a better chance because we got all the good players gone. Let's get rid of them all."
Yeah, and I know for me, you mentioned Adepticon just recently. The recent Adepticon, that was probably the best experience I've ever had at a big event. The amount of events that I participated in, the people that were there, you know, a bunch of us went down there. It was a great time. I've never had such a good time at an event as I did at Adepticon. Meeting everybody and kind of reacquainting with stuff, plus the events, like you said. And to be honest, after seeing what Gen Con was just like, I'm actually scared to death that the closest event we have, which is Adepticon, something that's been like, I look forward to that every year. I'm nervous that Adepticon is going to be a Worlds thing, that if I don't do the last chance qualifier on Wednesday or Tuesday or something like that, that the whole event is going to be useless to me to go. And that would be horrible to lose something that I've cherished ever since I've been playing X-Wing.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. I mean, because I agree that for me, it is very close too. And like, I don't know. I mean, like, maybe Nick wants to host something at his local game store that if we don't make the last chance qualifier, that we could just go leave the con and play somewhere else. But it sucks because I'm going to be buying that 4-day pass, right? You're investing in a 4-day pass, and yeah, it'll be cool to walk around and see some things, but it's not as big as Gen Con. Holy crap.
Right.
Like, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, and that's Adepticon was a quarter of the cost as Gen Con, and it was, to me, 10 times the event. So that's something's wrong there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about like improvement pieces, right? Like, so this is, I think there's a few things that we could talk through that could be improvement pieces that could change some of that. So the one feels bad we didn't really talk a little bit about, right? Is the one feels bad is if you got knocked out of cut going in, or knocked out of going into cut by a 5-0 player. That was the other thing. Brendan experienced that. He was the lone 3-1 that fought a 4-0. The guy could have lost the game and both could have made cut, but the guy played the game, right? No qualms with that. I don't want to get into that piece of it. That's a whole different discussion for another day. But I want to talk about that piece of it is a very big feels bad. So Brendan had lost his fourth, or his, he was 3-1, had lost his fourth game, was doing very well the times before, and then had to play a 5-0 player who played a resistance list that just pretty much started to tear him apart. And the big thing about that is you could do a couple of different things. So the first thing is we could say anybody that is 4-0 in a 5-0 event, right? So if it's a 5-round event, if you're 4-0, you immediately get a bye. You're done. You don't have to play your 5th game. They take you out of the cut. And we then get to allow the 3-1 players to all play each other. And then if you get paired down with the 3-2 player, if you get paired down with a 2-2 player, right? It's not as bad as big of a feel bad, right? You're not playing a player that has already made cut, right? Like that player is playing for a bye to sleep in. And I disagree 100% with that across the board. We should be filling these tournaments out. So there should have been nobody sleeping in. They had 22 people, right? At Gen Con. 22 people. And how many people got buys and got to sit around, and show up late? And I get that's great. Like, people like that. But to me, it just seems like, if you're going to do a top 32, let's do a top 32. Otherwise, we should just cut it at a top 16 and say, sorry, And that's the issue with X and 1 is it creates uneven cuts. There is no longer an even set of players. At all. So if you brought that out, Brendan would have been 3-1 and played other 3-1, and it would have it changed all of the pairings around. And the funny thing is, Brendan probably would have got paired up with me, and then that would have been hilarious. Like, for the two of us to have to play each other for him to get in or not. But at least it would take some of that pressure out of it, and then it also gives that reward to that person who has been perfect. They've been perfect that whole tournament. Like, I get people want to play, and let them play on the side then. The 2 5-0s, you go play each other. The third one, here's a free game of aces round, and everybody gets, we didn't do tickets because, it wasn't Adepticon, but everybody gets this small extra little prize for going 5-0. And I don't care. We could make it a prize and give them a bye. I don't care. But for the 5-0 player to knock somebody out of cut seems kind of like a feels bad to me. And you can apply this to either side of the coin. So that was one of the ideas that I had kind of come up with. Anybody else have ideas for changes?
I really liked your idea that you had mentioned. It'd be interesting to try a tournament with it just to see how it played out, of pulling people who have made it out and just call it good. And again, I mentioned earlier, I still don't mind that. If you're a top 4 and 2, you make it. Like I know with 3 days it's a little more complicated because if you're doing a top 32, the numbers don't add up perfectly. But I think there's a solution in there somewhere. But I still don't mind if it's just based on ranking too. So
yeah. And I think you could do that. I think looking at it both ways, like we know the one way works, right? We know if we just do it based on ranking and X amount of people, we know that works. Like we've done that before. But if you pull the others out, what would that have done to the tournament? And I think you're right. I think the only way to test that is to actually do it live, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now,
Other
the
suggestions?
the other question I had, right, is that the reason I would hang on, I'm trying to clarify my thought here. Um, I do understand that they divided the qualifiers for for the first 3 days, right? You had three. You can go to one of the 3 days to qualify for the final event that happened on Sunday. My guess is that they expected to have a higher amount of players to come in, and that's why they spread it out. Do you think that we would have had that issue of being of that inconsistent pairing with somebody who was undefeated to someone who was like one loss away from being knocked out if they would have shortened it into 2 days and have more players fill out both days?
I think that I would agree. Yes, I think you would have less. I think you would have less ability for that to happen. And I say that because one day 9 people got into cut, one day 7, and one day 8. Right? I think that's how it worked out. 8, 7, and 9 based on
Okay.
each day. So you would have, if you had combined everything, it would have been, you would I think you would it would have been different. I think you would have ended up with a top 20 if I remember right. I'm not 100% sure. But I think it would have been a top 20. So you would have cut 2 more people out probably from it, but you would have had less pairings for that. I
Because I
think.
mean, in my mind, you can do a top 16 for both days, and then that gets combined into a top 32, which still equals out to 5 rounds on the final day, and you get that full participation for that final day for everybody trying to make it up, to win the event. I think that that particular way seems fairer and probably is less money that AMG has to pay for the event space if they're only needing to, cover the event or that area for 3 days versus 4 days. I think monetarily that just makes more sense. But I mean, I just without that piece of information of what AMG was expecting for each day for attendance for players, I think that they kind of expected to get more players in that way. But in the future, I think that it probably would have been better just to have the first 2 days for qualifiers and then combining both top 16s for the final cut for the following day or the last day.
And I'm going to throw out a crazy idea that I've been thinking about, and I don't know why they don't allow it because it would only benefit them. Is why can't I do multiple qualifiers?
Yeah.
Like, why can't I do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday if I want to? If there's slots open, what does it hurt if I do all 3 days? It doesn't cause any more judging. It doesn't cause all it does is mean they make more money, and I have a chance of making it. At least then I can feel like if I spend all that money to go to this event, if I can make it there on Thursday and I didn't make it, I'll sign up for Friday and I'll sign up for Saturday.
I think and they should give you a discount too and say it's a $10 ticket.
I don't even care if it's full price. Like I've already spent $150 going to Gen Con. Like what at that point, if people want to pay it, let them pay it.
Fair enough.
So I think that would at least be kind of interesting if you're like, man, my list just didn't do with the meta is kind of, at this, I'm going to switch it up and I'm going to submit this one. And there's plenty of time to do it. And it's a lot of games. But at least I would get my money's worth of at the con because I have to pay for that ticket no matter what.
True.
So
I think that would be a good idea, Corey. And I still think I would argue going for a discount. If you bought in on Thursday, you get discounted tickets. But I don't see why they don't let you. Even like for me, the difference would be is remember your Seventh Sister and what Seventh Sister does, because Seventh Sister, that one game is what ruined my whole run.
yeah.
Is that specific that literally that one round made the difference in my list, like winning and losing that.
The other thing could be is if you've already got the judges there, is having, in a sense, many last chance qualifiers. So let's say they took, I don't know how many people per day, but on Saturday, if they knew how many they were going to roughly have, you could have a thing where anyone who's played on Saturday can do a special event if you've already played to get those last couple spots. would be another thing. So like it's 4 people who have already been in the event on Thursday and Friday, and you get to try again on Saturday if you want to fight for those last couple spots. Something like that could be kind of interesting too, just to give you a chance of like, hey, we're the scrubs. Let's have a scrub off and
and whoever gets in fills in, rounds out that bottom half. I love that idea. Actually, I like that idea even more than letting you play multiple days. I think that actually should be a thing. Because that would allow you to fill it out, and you know, like AMG, that was the big thing, is they had a 4 o'clock cutoff, blah 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 blah. Hence, they didn't want to do this. But essentially, they had a top 32 to some extent. You had to play some people early to get this.
Yeah,
and
even when you look at the bracket that D had posted for the final day, I mean, they had at least 3 tables open that could have filled out those slots because they only had 22 players for the final day. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit longer to make sure you to go to time, blah blah blah. You could also do, I don't know, there could be a lot of things you could do to shorten that first round up to, if needed, to get it to move faster. But the other option, and this goes to, if you want to remain with the X1 format, hand out more Worlds invites, right? So if instead of saying we're gonna keep an X1 because we want less players on the last day to be able to play Top Cut because we want it to be more elite. Let's hand out, and this is what Dion does, and I guess so I'll steal this a little bit from Dion, per se, and say it needs to apply to Worlds invites. So if you gave out and said top 8 or top 10 of every day got Worlds invites, but only X and 1 got to play in Cut for the fancy prizes, I'd be okay with that too. I still would like to play in Top Cut, but it would at least make it be a little bit more of a Fields good, especially for all the money we spent going to Gen Con, if I were able to do that. Right, because I would have gotten a Worlds invite. Brendan would have got a Worlds invite, and then whoever was below us that barely missed it too would have gotten a Worlds invite as well. And that'd be 3 more people that would have gotten those invites. And it doesn't cost AMG anything to give out Worlds invites. All it means is we're going to come spend more effing money at Worlds. That's what that means. Is we're going to come spend money at Worlds to hang out and play and do X-Wing stuff with you. You know, especially if you have a new scenario that you're going to release around that time. FFG or AMG, hello, guess who wants to come a day early and play the new scenario before anyone else gets to? This guy does. Who wants to make JJ come play crazy lists for a day? Duos. I love duos. That was a great experience. That was actually the most fun I had, more than Aces High, was duos. Yeah. That's because I got to play with Dale Cromwell. Was it Dave? I don't know, whatever. One of the Cromwell guys from overseas. We got to play on the same duo. It was fun. I liked it. I had fun. That guy is effing hilarious. By the way, he's hilarious. Just as an FYI. He was very fun to play with. Anyway. But if you gave that, you would have more people sticking around. Like Cory going 1 and 2, he still could win his other 2 games. You could have continued to play if you knew you had a possibility of getting a Worlds invite, but not making Cut. People would have stuck around longer.
Yeah.
And that's without even having to do what Dion did and hand out tickets every round and all these other crazy things. I mean, Dion really went out at Adepticon. I felt spoiled. That was my first large convention I'd been to for X-Wing, and I felt very spoiled, and I felt very very mistreated, I guess, this time around, personally. So
also Isoplane asked the question of who determines that, and if I'm understanding things right, and I could be wrong, so feel free, chat, to correct me, but I'm pretty sure it was Dion and D that wanted to do X and 1 because it was easier, and I know Chris Allers was, right, from Craig
Allen.
Chris Allen, yeah.
He's the one that started. I think he did a whole thing on this whole X and 1 thing about why this is the way tournaments should be. There was a podcast, I think, on Fly Better that they talked about it, and it ruffled my feathers then, and it still ruffles my feathers now. He's a great guy. They're all great guys, but I feel like it's a lot of this makes it easier for us, and that's kind of the mentality that it's shifted to. Because AMG actually posted something earlier that they were going to do playoffs where they're going to take the top 10, and then there was going to be 2 people from each day that had to do some Saturday event to play off to see who made it in the cut. That was the
That would have been
original
cool.
format, and it was a little confusing the way they wrote it. But their original intent was to fill it to a full top 32, and the powers that be that were kind of judging and handling everything, I believe, said we want to do X and 1, which ended up with 22 people or whatever making it to cut, and 10 people didn't get to play that could have. So,
And they still had to get up early.
yeah.
So, and
As
guess
much as
what?
I love all three of those guys, and again, I'm not throwing shade on any of those people or as the community. I don't like the philosophy that they seem to be behind, if I'm understanding everything correctly, with this X and 1 thing. But that's not a slight
No.
on them as people.
I think if you think about it, Corey, if we look at it, and then I kind of want to move on to some list building stuff because I think that's kind of fun. If you think about it, none of this is never going to be a critique of an organizer or even AMG or anything like this. I mean, I will throw a little shade at AMG for not just being solidified in what they want, right? It seems logical to me that they just make a dictation and we follow it, just like we did with the new format. I feel that they should do that, but I think the thing is it's everybody loves the game and they want to create the best space for the game. And we all have differences of an opinion here and there. I'm probably more vocal and swear a little bit more than other people do about it. And you got the brunt of my why this is BS that Brendan and I didn't make it, especially Brendan. The feel bads was more for him than it was for me, because that's a guy that just joined X-Wing. That's a guy that like has spent, I don't know, 2 months critiquing a list to play every week and it's funny, he was getting hammered in our local group and then went there and went 3-0 right away. And it's like, there you go. That's really good. And his list performed very well. He knew what he was doing. And he just is a kind of a little bit of a feels bad under that scenario option, you know? Whereas if we had been in the old format, he would have been able to make cut, you know?
I do want to jump in actually I am kind of very much in support of AMG, and I'll throw this out there. For them to jump in and do organized play to the fullest extent, I don't think they're prepped for that and ready for that. I actually appreciate that they reached out to Gold Squadron and other groups to help run these events because they have the experience with X-Wing. To me, that's actually a incredibly smart choice to say, hey, you've run a tournament before, do this for us now. I think the problem that in my opinion, that they ran into is they didn't set the expectations of what they want the tournament to be. In the original rules that they had for who was going to qualify, to me, it gave a glimpse of we want to get as many people in as we could, but they didn't back that up with, hey, make this happen. You guys figure out how to get 32 people on day, the second day into the event. They didn't kind of push that. And so I feel like that's where AMG kind of failed, is not by enforcing, we want 32 people in the cut, according to their original side of things. But I do want to say, I think it's actually brilliant for them to take on the people that have been running and playing X-Wing for longer than, their company's even been around, and saying, hey, help us out with this. We want our community to be a part of this, right? So for us to fault AMG because of that, I think is a little bit crazy. We want AMG to be taking a part or being a part of the community, and the community to be a part of where this game goes. And we can have these discussions, right? We're not on the same page as some people, and that's fine. But I'm glad that they don't just say, this is what we're doing, screw you all, and we have, no part in it. So
fair enough. All right, so I think that's enough tournament discussion. Let's talk list building, right? I think list building is one of the key features of X-Wing. And I think that's one of the things, like, when we talk about, like, why do we love the game? Yeah, well, it's dials. Yes, it's that. I agree with everybody. Yeah, dials are great. But at the same token, I love list building, even though I'm not very good at it. And I love the fact that we get to do these things and talk through what these things mean to us and to everybody else. So I'm going to real quick. There's a few things that I wanted to cover, right? I think when we talk about list building, we have a component set. There's a set of different types of components that fit into list building. And then I probably have about 15 questions I want to ask everybody, which we probably won't get to all of them, but that's kind of how I want to run this. So when we talk about list building, and we're going to go around the table, what does list building mean to you? And what do you recommend to other players when it comes to list building? And we're going to start with Cory.
Boy. I mean, I guess it's a little bit different whether it's be me or whether I'm trying to help somebody. If I'm trying to help someone, I usually ask them, what things do they like to be aggressive? Do they like to be, very technical? What kind of player are they? Especially if they're new, obviously, then it's more of a simple list. But so it's tough when I don't know who I'm building a list for or helping out. I know with me, when I build, my number one thing is I have to have ships that I really like. If my rule is, if there's only one ship on the board, do I like flying that ship? If I don't, then typically it's out, unless it's a really, really cheap one. My second rule is I don't fly meta lists. I hate flying things that are known. And so that's usually my second rule, is making sure that I build something that is different than kind of what's being out there. And it's not necessarily about just, excuse me, countering what's out there, but just doing something different people haven't expected or haven't seen is kind of a part two of when I'm building. So if I answered your questions.
Yeah. JJ.
Well, for me, one of the things that I consider here is the physical aspect of it, right? Like, what exactly do I have physically available to me that I can fly, right? If I'm a newer player and I only have a few like ships and upgrades available, then at that point I'm limited right off the bat by what I can build for that list. For me personally, I own pretty much everything for X-Wing, all factions and stuff, so I'm not really constrained by that. So typically when I'm going for like different components that I want for list building, I'm looking at different archetypes. Now, this is something that I kind of went through early on when I was starting to play competitively for X-Wing, was trying to find like my niche, like what styles of lists that I prefer, and then build off of there. I kind of did do a little bit of metawing to see what lists were doing well, and really for the fact of like trying to understand how they worked, and then trying to use some of their qualities or some of their synergies and apply them to my lists in different factions, and see if I can get that kind of same synergy for it. And early on for me, what really worked for me were four ship builds that could do a little bit of everything and kind of respond to everything across the build. And as long as I had those components available to me, then I can go from that archetype and then start building off of that. And that'll be my building block to start out building the list.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break real quick and from the list building, and I apologize. We're going to bring in a special guest because there's a new initiative that has kind of come out that has to do with tournament prep, right? And so what I want to do is we'll take like 5 minutes and kind of introduce it, and then that way everybody kind of knows what it is. And I apologize, I was supposed to bring them in before, but you know me, so. All right. So looks like we have an Isoplane. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Planning Phase Syndicate.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How's the audio? I'm on my cell phone, so not quite sure how the audio's coming in.
You're fine. We can hear you.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
Isoplane has put together a special initiative with Hexiled, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to have them on just to kind of introduce it, to give a little shout out for what it is. That way, for anybody that's listening that wants to participate in it, can go ahead, get into it. So, Iso, go ahead. Why don't you introduce your initiative?
Okay, so basically, you guys were talking about worlds and invites earlier, and the biggest thing for me when I talk to people, at least especially people from outside the US where travel costs can be prohibitively expensive, is that it really sucks to earn an invite and then not be able to attend Worlds due to financial hardships or just, the cost of travel. So I wanted to really try and help everyone around the world, US, Europe, Asia, South America, Africa, anywhere in the world, just to try to fund a little bit of their cost to come to Worlds. So that's why I started this Isoplane Initiative, kind of play on words there. And my goal is I've got a budget set aside, and I on the Hexile Gaming's website they have, if you find the Isoplane Initiative subsection, you can fill out a form and basically ask for a travel stipend, or sorry, a second, I'm holding the baby at the moment. Just ask for a travel stipend. So you can ask for help with airfare, hotel, room and board, whatever it may be. I'm trying to focus on people that have a Worlds invite first. So people that earned the invite within the last 2 or 3 years, that are still valid. Put your information in there, how you want it. And then after that, I'm going to try and focus on people who are community leaders. So people who run podcasts, do streaming, do organize tournaments for their local groups and such things such as that. And that's my next group of people I want to bring in. So, and the other thing also is you don't have to do it for yourself. I know, because sometimes asking for money can be a bit of a touchy subject for people. So if you know someone in your play group, your community, that's like a really awesome person, awesome character, kind of like this, our group wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this person. People like that you think deserve a trip to go to Worlds, because that can be a dream, like we call it a bucket list topic for a lot of people. You can nominate them, you can recommend them, tell me why you think they deserve a trip to Worlds, and at the end, my deadline is I think the first week of November. I'm going to review all the applications, see how much money I have in the pocket, and then basically start sending money out to people so that they can purchase those tickets, get those the hotels booked and everything, so they can make it to Worlds Adepticon next year. I'm also, if you want to help me, I appreciate it. A couple of people are helping me. They're doing some fundraisers to basically add to my bank. I'm also taking any donations if you want to help support the cause and basically make Worlds for everybody. Make so that everyone can come and we can all meet together, drink beer, and play X-Wing and roll some dice.
Well, cool.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, it sounds awesome, and I think that's one of the first things we've seen in this community to happen. And I really appreciate your willingness to help out the community in any way you can.
Yep, and it's as simple, like I said, check out Hexile Gaming website. Later on, I'm really bad with names. I think it's Louis Leong. I think it's from Europe. He is making some metal objective token markers, and they'll be colored with a little GR75 on there. And those will be for sale, and all the proceeds from that are going to get added to my fundraiser. So if you want to support it, you can either donate or buy those metal tokens. They're not available for sale yet. He's still working on the design and production. That's going to take a little bit more time, but you can fill out a web form that says if you're interested, and he can kind of gauge how much to produce with that interest.
Yep, awesome. And if we get selected to be one of the streamers for XCC, what we will do is we'll set up that link for a donations directly to you and promote it throughout the XCC finals here in the next 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Isoplane, so much. We just wanted to have you on real quick. We want to talk about it. It's exciting. It's part of the way that we can positively change X-Wing for the better. Even though we want to complain a little bit about the X and One, at least this will help ease some of that for those that need it. So if you would like to, make sure you go nominate somebody. So I know somebody in our local play group that I'm going to be nominated. People that definitely would like to go that may not be able to afford or want to spend the money. How that is. So thank you, Isoplane, so much. And if you ever want to come back on, let us know or send me an email or tell me whenever we have the fundraisers. We'll make sure we promote those as well.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Cool.
Take care, guys.
Yep. Take care, Iso. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. We'll edit that.
That was great.
Yeah,
that was absolutely great.
That's amazing. So
yeah, I would love to like one day, like during Worlds, just have all these players that came in for the Isoplane Initiative to come in and just have a drink, and with all these players that come in from all around the world, and just have a drink and just have a great time. That'll be such a great experience to do for Adepticon, assuming that we can find a place that's open past 10 o'clock. So
yeah, well, that's why we got to get a big Airbnb that has like a big downstairs, so you can just come have a drink in
right
in an Airbnb instead of having to go to a bar. There's nothing in Chicago, in that area of Chicago, that wants to stay open late. Yeah. That's a whole different discussion. We had that discussion like 6 months ago. So if you want to go back and check out our 6 months ago episode, we talked all about our Adepticon experience, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it, as we get closer this upcoming year. So back to list building, though. So I agree with both of you in terms of what does list building mean to us. What do we want to accomplish with it? And I think, like Cory was saying, is you got to know your audience, right? And I think that's the biggest component, right? Is, are you working towards only playing what you own, right? Or is it an online game and you don't care? I own too many things, except for I don't own a BIS stand, so there's no way in God's green earth I would ever be able to fly a YT 2400 because I don't own one. But so Cory never built me a list for that, but he knows that because I hate Dash with such a passion. It's not even funny. I don't even want to see him come back in the game. He can just die for all I care.
Side note, I really want to get like a Tanner's list of hated upgrades and pilots, and I just want you to number them from like most hated to least. And as new cards interactions come out, we'll have to like make you rank them and see like which one is being demoted or increased just based on your new interactions, because that's hilarious to me, man.
we could do that for a Patreon only show. Maybe that's what we should do. We'll do a Patreon only show where Tanner just goes off on a rail about every pilot he hates. And every upgrade card. Nia Nub is up there. Nia Nub,
yes.
Torkel. I really don't. I had to watch it anyway. We're gonna keep moving. Keep moving. So I think that's the big thing. And are you looking to play for fun? Are you not looking to play for fun? Really, that's kind of where you're going with it. Because Cory will build me lists when we talk about being competitive, right? And we'll say, hey, I feel this will work, or I feel this will work. But if I'm in the mood to just do something fun, it's a whole different mindset. I'm going to be running a gauntlet at that point. Though there's a gauntlet that did make top cut at Gen Con. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe gauntlets are so good and we just are undiscovered.
They just need time. Yeah, they need time and practice to make it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of where, when we look at the different components, that's one of the big components. Do you want to play something niche? Do you want to play, do you want to play competitive? Do you want to play for fun? I will tell you, running 2 gauntlets in Separatist is pretty bloody fun. I don't care what anybody says. It is pretty bloody fun. And you can ask Cory, and I'm pretty sure I didn't win more than 1 out of like the 4 games I played with them. But they were fun to run.
2 gauntlets versus 2 decimators, and I'll just let you guys just slam into each other. So
actually, let's go, baby. Tomorrow I'm bringing both my gauntlets. I bought 2 gauntlets specifically to run 2 of them in Separatist.
Ridiculous.
14 points. That still leaves me with 6 points for droids or 2 bombers, whatever I want. Or Grievous. And give you a free point. Probably won't do that. It's cowardly. It is not cowardly to run 2 gauntlets, Greg. You cannot say that now. You don't like it when I run 2 fire sprays.
Yeah, it was fire sprays. That's what he's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I will admit I am cowardly if that makes you feel better. So that's what you get for subbing to the stream today. There we go. I will admit I'm cowardly for running 2 fire sprays. But let's be fair. I've ran 2 fire sprays since I first started playing. Just to be fair, that was the first set I ever ran. You can clip it, baby. Clip it and put it on your channel. I'm all for it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about list building too, right? So what are some of the methods that you use when you want to build to 20 points, right? So let's talk through the process. So Cory, when you're sitting down to build a list, right, and you're like, okay, I'm going to build a list for JJ. I know JJ likes every faction. He's really obsessed with rebels and throwing bombs, and he can't do that anymore. So how can I get JJ a list that's similar to that? So what are kind of some of the steps that you go through when you look to build to 20 points?
Yeah, when I look at it, I think my favorite list type that I usually try and start with when I'm talking to people is having a ship that can kind of be on its own, and then having somewhere around 2 to 3 ships that can fly together is kind of some synergy, is typically where my list will fall into. I flew one literally just today that was kind of very similar to that, with 3 ships that kind of work together, and another one that was meant to kind of be more of an ace on the side. And I usually start in that kind of range. I've never been a dual fire spray type person. So I like, as JJ said, 4 ship lists is kind of my starting point. I have a list that's 5, but I don't go any more than that. And I usually don't go any less than 3 substantial ships, not throwing in a droid just because you have extra points. And when I look at a list, the other thing I really try for is making sure that it's not something that if one piece gets removed, the whole list just falls apart. I hate those kind of lists. So I like to have lots of options so that you can do different things. So like K2SO crew for Rebels, for instance, you mentioned Rebels, is one of my favorites because you can do 2 different things with that card. You've got a mod that you can give. You can also do a white jam, which most people forget about, that you can jam with K2SO. So looking for toolboxes, I think, is something that I think my list typically lend themselves heavily towards, that of having lots of different things. I can go heavy offense, heavy defense, support, kind of mixing that stuff all around. And I think that allows you to kind of deal with different situations. And I think probably JJ is very similar to me in that, where we like those toolbox lists where there's some beef and you can take some hits, but you also have a lot of different options to be able to do things with lists with your pieces. It's not all just Alpha Strike. Those are boring to me. I don't like all just ace play either, because I find that that's running that knife's edge. So I kind of like some beef with a little bit of ace. So
Yeah.
Or you could just run a lat with Anakin, and it seems lats with Anakin just do everything. Anakin just kills everything, I guess. So I think that's interesting. That's interesting. JJ, how about you? Where do you start?
So for me, if I'm setting up a list to let's say play for like a tournament, right? In something that I do for myself, just because I own everything and I want to make sure that I use everything I can. One of the mantras that I have is that I never play the same faction in a row when I'm going for like tournaments. So like if my last tournament, no matter what it is, if I play Rebels, then I have to play something else that's not that. So that's my selection process for like choosing my faction, right? Earlier in my times when I was still collecting stuff, the only thing I had was original trilogy. So it would be like Rebel, Empire, Scum, and I would just go in that order. But once I have my faction selected, then I'm looking for something that could fit in that archetype that I had, right? Those utility lists. And not every faction has the same type of availability in pilots to fill that type of utility list. So then you have to think about other types of archetypes that that can fit that. So when you look at Scum, something that me and you came up together, the double fire sprays, that was an archetype that I used quite a bit in 2.0, and in 2.5 it got even better, I would say, just because you have the ability now to add on a support ship, which we use Kanan to help support those 2 fire sprays. That helps make those 2 ships more effective. And you have different utilities for them. One is more of a long range type of attacker. The other one is more of a close range type of attacker. And it's about making your opponent make different difficult choices. You do have other archetypes in Scum, and I'm picking on Scum specifically for this one, where you have enough points to put in some heavy hitters and some support ships. Particularly, there's one that I played against, that Crispy played against me once, which was an electroproton bomb list that included Iman and Zaman with Manaru, as well as oh my gosh, Gamut Key, and a 4th ship I forget. It was that similar type of archetype where you had a heavy hitter, a support ship, and then another one that can do a little bit of everything. And that it's about making those points fit and trying to be as efficient as they can for the points that you're investing into that ship. So that does dictate what type of the amount of loadout that you can get to help maximize that particular ship's role in your list is a very, very big deal, right? Because if you're investing 7 points in a fire spray, are you picking one that can do well on its own with the loadout points to help back it up and expand it, like Iman, or if you're already picking Calf Scarlet, who has a lower amount of points but has a higher initiative, and her ability doesn't really trigger because you're not really taking generics with you, right? Are you paying the points just for that initiative? So that's where you start making those choices.
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting piece, right? You know, like we talk a little bit about loadout versus initiative versus you know, points cost for ships, right? So Boba's 9, but gets what, 22? Boba's a 22 loadout ship, I think, or is he 23? Is he 23? I gotta hold on. I'm gonna look now. I guess I have this stupid thing up. I can just look, can I? Yep. So Boba's 22. So that brings up like an interesting piece, you know, or an interesting part of the discussion, right? Think about it this way, right? If Boba's worth 9 and you get 22 loadout, do you ever consider loadout when it comes to picking a ship, right? Or is it based more on what fits and then loadout second, right? And so, for example, in our fire spray list, JJ, I won't lie and say that the majority of this is based around Boba. Boba is the main centerpiece of that list. It is. And then it's what can I fit in there that can do damage, is easy to run, and all of those other things, right? And Boba's easy to run, Eamon's easy to run, you know, because they're dual fire sprays, and Kanan is your support ship that comes in. When we pick Eamon, we did not consider loadout point values because Eamon does not have the most loadout point value out of all those fire sprays. We picked Eamon for the specific ability, right? And it's because we wanted a different type of offense. And it's funny because if you know me, I like weird, intricate, like weird type lists. And I guess I never really got into that when we talked about components. But for me, I want something that's crazy different than just point and shoot. And I have always liked bombs, and I know Cory hates bombs with a passion. And some of that's probably my fault. But you know, like the bomb piece of that is unique to me, and I feel that's a unique aspect of X-Wing that doesn't violate a lot of the principles like fucking Dash Rendar does, you know. And so when we built this list, we didn't actually think about, oh, okay, what other pointed ship with high loadout points could fit in here. We said, what other mechanic would work good to offer a dual threat to the opponent? So now the question comes all the way back after that long ramble that says, do you look at ship loadout points? Is that ever like a thing? Or is it almost always based on the actual ship that you want to fit in your archetype? Go ahead, Cory.
Yeah, go ahead.
He just cut you off.
Yeah.
I think for me, I do look at loadout points and as a key point because a lot of the factions I fly, they have a lot of ships that are the same point value. So I love Resistance. If I was to pick one faction, that's all I could fly, it would be Resistance. I love the T-70. It's probably my favorite ship. One of my favorite ships in all Star Wars. And so with T-70s, like I fly very odd choices. I don't fly Nien Nunb, whichever one tells me I should be. I fly Ello because Ello is one of my favorite ships, and his loadout points allow me to do things that I can do. Plus, he's got a great pilot ability. And then I also, as my second T-70, I fly Temmin, the Boosty Temmin, which I've flown that ship since 1.0. it is one of my favorite ships. It's an amazing piece, I think, and so I choose those because pilot abilities, but also the loadouts give me exactly what I want out of those ships. I look at Nien Nunb and I don't get what I want for the same points. Nien Nunb doesn't give me what I get with Elo. I get the R6D8, I get heroic, I get HLC, and Deadeye Shot. I think is what I've got on it. And I can't fit that with Nien Nunb because he has to have pattern analyzer and stuff. So I do look at loadout points pretty heavily. I was just building a scum list. You mentioned those, and I picked Kath Scarlet because I can get the loadout I want, the pieces I want in the fire spray, and she's got the most loadout of all of them, which gave me the pieces I needed to do the things I wanted to do. So I do heavily look at loadout, but it's typically driven by theme before then, especially with my T70s. I have no love for Nien Nunb, but Elo and Temin are my besties. So,
and
yeah.
I will tell you, I like Temin ever since. I never knew Temin. Like, I never paid attention to the ability to do the boost thing. Never did. We had that on stream today. So good. Just so good. And how often are you doing a 2 to 4 maneuver with an X-Wing? Almost all the time.
All the time, yeah.
Like, Temin's ability, I think in our game that we streamed earlier, triggered every round but the first round. I think the first round is the only round they didn't trigger it. Other than that, it triggered like every round. You would have been proud, Cory.
Yeah, he's almost as fast as and I will check that out. He's almost as fast as an A-Wing, but can punch super hard. So, fantastic ship.
Yeah, if you like Snap, you'll love A-Wings. Yes, that's what Navi says in the chat.
We need to give A-Wings some love, man. They're too expensive.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, absolutely. Now, for me, I do agree in the same like vein that loadout points do matter, but I think it depends on the faction. There's certain factions that loadout values aren't as necessary rather than other factions, and I'll cite a specific example because the lack of different options in the sequel trilogy and the prequel factions. The original trilogy factions don't have that same problem. If you're looking to fill out, if you're looking for like a 5 or 4 point ship in Rebels or an Empire, you have a plethora of different options available to you where you can kind of pick and choose what you want to add onto your list for that same ship cost. And then from there, if you like that particular pilot and it fits with what you're trying to do, then at that point you're looking at loadout values and see what you can do to see if they're going to be effective with the points that they have available to you. And if they can, that's great, and you can keep that particular ship there for that cost. You're looking when you take a look at like the Separatists, for instance. You take a look at your list. Like for instance, one that I've been running recently is Pre Vizsla with General Grievous, and that leaves me with 6 points. Or sorry, with 8 points that I can fill in my list, and I have to make the decision: do I want to try to do two bombardment drones and a vulture, or do I go with 4 vultures? Right, because of the loadouts and what I can get on it. So at that point, because there's really no other useful option for me and what I'm trying to accomplish with that list, I'm almost always going to the vultures because I want to have as many bodies as possible for what I want in that list. And really, there's nothing other in that faction that can fill that role like the vultures can. So I almost always tend to go for that extra ship because all I really need is discord missiles, and I'm set for those particular ships. Sure, I mean I do add in DFS for that little extra ability that can be useful sometimes. But even if I didn't have him on it, it doesn't really affect my choice to go for like a regular separatist drone that has 3 less points because the ship itself can only really take a missile slot, a mod slot, which is always going to be independent calculations, and the struts, and they have nothing else to really fill out those points. So in that case, it doesn't matter what kind of loadout value that particular drone has, because I can already fill its slot with something that's going to be useful for me in that case. So it just depends on the faction.
Oh, Greg's
right.
hating my list.
What's that? You hate all there. Yeah, so Cory sent me a list. Thought we'd bring it up, kind of talk through some of these questions I have, right? So you know, when we talk about like separating out pilots, there's an A-wing in here for Nabi. Cory specifically put that in there for Nabi only. That's the only reason that he put that in there.
I flew
Other
that
than
today, so that was before this.
Okay.
We're on the same page though.
Well, Nabi prefers Resistance A-wings over Rebel A-wings every day of the week, which I would agree with, except for Resistance A-wings for 5 points don't do what Ahsoka can do. So it kind of seems a little silly that maybe we leave the generic A-wings in Resistance up high and like lower some of the cost of the other A-wings so we see a few more A-wings in play. I don't want to see a A-wing meta where all you run is 6 bloody A-wings, please. That does not sound like any fun in Resistance to me. You can have 4 A-wings then, Nabi. Nabi's allowed to have 4 A-wings. That's it. No more. Everybody else can have 5. But anyway, so Cory sent me a list. So as we talk through some of these things, I think it makes a little bit more sense. And he picked Rebel, I swear, just because I hate Rebel so much. But on a positive note, there is no Bistain in here, so there's that. And there is no Dash Rendar in here either, so that kind of works out. So when we talk through this list, Cory, what was the idea behind bringing this list up? Like, what do you want to get into next when it talks about, or when we come to list building?
So I think this list was a goal of creating a list that had my flanking, my ace, and then it had some beef, or actually a lot of beef in this case. And also realizing that when you've got a lot of health, if you can keep it alive, you're, with only having 4 or 5 rounds of combat, it's great. And so this was something a little bit cheeky. Everybody jokes about like gonk droids being stupid. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way to actually utilize them. And I could obviously switch it out for probably Magva Yarrow or something like that. It would probably be more intelligent. But I did want to give it a try. And so in this list, every ship in here is a support ship as well as a heavy gun. Every ship in here is giving extra actions out to other ships. And so any one of them can die, and the list can still do lots of extra things. So looking for double mods, looking at, during combat, I actually triggered K2SO off of Kraken to strip of reinforce off of fire spray. So during combat jamming or target locks. So when I talk about a jack of all trades and kind of having all these capabilities, I brought this list up because it's just one of those things that's off the beaten path, and it has a ton of tools. One round I just held everything. My big ships just sat because they can all do a 0 stop, but they don't lose agility if you use Leia. So they all just sit there, take their mods and pass everything around. And there's, three ships with force crew. So it's...
You love your force crew, don't you?
I do.
But not 2 forces. Don't give them 2 force.
No, not 2. And so I'm sure people looking at this would have a ton of ways that they would change this up and mess with it. But the idea was having extra, like more actions than you almost need, double modded shots, and ships that wouldn't die to an alpha strike or to heavy hitting. And to be honest, with the gauntlet, if you wanted to during combat, you could actually regen a shield every round if you wanted to, with Kraken next to him. Because Ezra can charge the gonk and then Kraken can trigger it. But Ahsoka can do it, and so can Saw can trigger it with a coordinate. And he's got the force, so if he coordinates, it doesn't matter, he still has a mod. So as much as people laugh at gonk, for instance, in this case, if you have a gauntlet that regens 3 shields, that's going to be a sad day if you go shoot at that thing. Plus, it's got Notorious, and so you're taking strains as well, and it's getting re-rolls from it. So the idea was to create a gauntlet that you didn't want to shoot at, and if you did just try to, it's just going to regen back up, and that's 7 points. That's just a monster 7 points that you're not touching. Ahsoka is super hard to kill. You can kill Kraken, that's fine. He's 3 points, and then you've got Saw, who U-wings I think are one of the sturdiest ships in the game, especially when you back them up with a Force crew as well. So
a Maul Force crew of all crews too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it was intended to be something that wouldn't die, that was the ships I like to fly and fun. And this killed Cad Bane in 1 round. The list did. So you hit him with the Mag Pulse, hit him with the Plasma, hit him with Ezra, and you've got a dead Cad Bane. So it was kind of a toolboxy list as well. That was pretty fun. So.
And I think this kind of goes into when we talk about what has to make cut, what does not make cut. So we used to call it in Destiny net deck listing, right?
Yep.
Like, or net listing, net decking, right? Like, that's what we used to call it, right? Because we'd steal somebody else's deck and then tweak it, right? This here is to some extent more of a unique creation. Not only have we not seen these 4 be ran, other than if you were on Hexile today, people saw you run it. So the cat's out of the bag, but but this is where you say, hey, I have an idea. So when we talk about list building on a high level, right? This is where Cory says, I have an idea. I want to do these set goals. And how do I get there?
Right.
And I think that's the big thing, right? Like, we could net deck. You could take like JJ's and my dual fire spray Kanan list, and you could tweak it all you want. Lots of people have done it. One Bay top cut at Gen Con, so there's that.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a little bit different than ours. They didn't have Eamon, unfortunately, and they ran Kanan in a different manner than we did. But that's what we talk about when we talk about net decking, that type of thing. This is a unique creation. So now we can sit down and say, okay, well, my play style would not be to put elusive plasma on Kraken. That would not be my personal play style, right? And I say with Ahsoka, I would not put Juke on Ahsoka. And that's just me. And that's because I don't like to take a lot of evades. Juke is like, though I have put Juke on Grievous before, or not on Grievous. Why would I put on Grievous? On a what do they call it? V1. There you go. A V1 before, right? And use Juke as a V1 type ship.
Mm-hmm.
We could tweak this list a little bit to be more of a is these things necessary? And I think that kind of goes into my next question. When you determine when do you cut upgrades or when do you cut certain pilots, when do you got to make that decision, right? So Cory's idea here is I want to be able to regenerate. I want to create a gauntlet that you do not want to kill. And I want every other ship to have its own unique utility that allows it to live. So that would tell me we can definitely not get rid of elusive. Like, elusive has to be that staple. Brilliant evasion has to be a staple for Ahsoka. But could we get rid of Juke? Could we get rid of Leia? Can we, instead of false transponder codes, could you put a different illicit or another 3-point upgrade? Is K2SO necessary? So now let's kind of go into, and JJ, like, what are your thoughts on if we were to, and again, not this list specifically, but if we want to start tearing apart and moving around some of these pieces, when do you start making that call?
So, because when I'm building these type of lists here, like, I want to make sure like I understand every particular ship's role in this particular list here. So if I'm making a change to a loadout, that's a little bit easier to do, just because there's so many different ways to load out the different pilots to make them effective for what they can do. But once you start changing either the chassis or the pilots, then you got to start taking into consideration how this affects the list as a whole, right? So you take a look at Iron Kraken, for instance, the 3-point ship here. Arguably, I think this is probably one of the more important pieces for this list, because this does enable different actions to occur, like during the engagement phase, which when you take a look at the ships like Saw Gerrera or Ahsoka Tano, either getting that extra mod that they need to do a more powerful shot, or if Ahsoka hasn't boosted or barrel rolled to get her to boost to get a better shot, or to arc dodge a potential deadly shot that could come in. That is really really important for that, especially if Ahsoka's taking an evade token to start for her action, and then after Iron Kraken shoots, giving her a target lock, so that way she can get off her mag pulse warheads, or or giving her a focus just for another defensive mod if she's caught in a bad spot. I think that's where you start looking, is when I'm changing that pilot, how is it going to affect the overall flow of this particular list here. So the if I were to change anything here, the only thing I would consider is maybe either changing Ahsoka, which that's a really tall order to change her in this particular list, just because she does have 3 force and she does have the ability to do that coordinate action for her ability. The only other consideration I would have would be the Ewing Saw Gerrera. The one other pilot I would think that would possibly be really good in here would be Magba Yarrow, just to help mitigate the potential rerolls from very ordnance heavy lists that rely on the rerolls, and that can help keep my list a little more alive, or at least a little more defensive in that case. But then at that point, I also have to consider, do if I do change to that pilot, now the loadout value comes into effect, right? Can I still have the same upgrades on that list and still make it effective? And when you take that little add-on there, those extra 4 points that you're losing switching from Saw over into Magva is a big deal. So you have to make a consideration at that point. One, if I do change that pilot over to Magva, is her ability enough to compensate for those 4 points of loadout value that I'm now losing? And if I do decide to go that route, how am I equipping her? What sacrifice am I making for this list to make it effective? And I would actually, I could still change Saw into Magva Yarrow and put the child on her, and also get rid of Hopeful, and I can have a Leia and child combo on Magva, and I still think that is a pretty decent change for it, and possibly something that could work.
So Cory, on your side, the same thing here is like, as you build this, like if you have to remove things, where do you consider it first? Are you looking specifically because the list, your goal for this list is to have a gauntlet that never dies, right?
Mhm.
You know, like, so if you did change some of those things up and you removed the K2SO, right, you could put a different crew carrier on there. I know you hate putting dual force on there. But would you be able to move points around to move Leia over there to drop to a different one? But like, what's the ideology behind if you have to remove some upgrades? Like, if you say, hey, okay, this did not work out super well in this aspect, what am I removing to change around to get a different ship or pilot that I want that could fit better?
Yeah, I mean, even on today on stream, Scott brought up that like no one shot Ezra because they're going to get strained and it's going to regen. So, I mean, that was my goal, was that it stayed alive, but it was almost too good. And so, looking at this, saying, do I spread that around? So, do we move, like, what's not being used? So, if no one's going to shoot the gauntlet, it doesn't need regen. So that's 5 points that I free up that I can put someplace else, right? So leave Notorious, or do you take Notorious off so that people are more likely to shoot Ezra? And so then I put Notorious maybe on Saw and figure out some other loadout points for him there. So maybe K2SO and Notorious get moved over to Saw. So you don't want to shoot that because you're going to get strained. You don't want to shoot Ezra because he's going to regen. So that means you have 2 targets that are kind of bad. One of them hurts you with a strain. The other one can regen. So that's something I would look at. You mentioned Juke. 100%. That may not. I didn't use it once, to be honest. I fired the mag pulse and then she booked it out of there. So that was one game, so I wouldn't want to call it for that. But the idea is you throw a mag pulse at range, and then you take an evade, and no one ever wants to shoot at Ahsoka because she's got force and an evade, and she can use the juke, at close range and kind of put some damage through, even though she's only 2 dice gun. So that leaves Kraken. And if you kill my 3-point ship, yes, it's helpful in the beginning, but after a while he loses his functionality. And fine, kill my Z95. I really don't care. So as far as moving things around, I think it is about looking at stuff after a number of lists. One of the guys from our group, Zach, he started bringing a notepad and actually writing down notes, which I had never thought about, and I need to do more of, is how did a match go? What upgrades did I use? What didn't I use? What did I play against? What was useful? What wasn't? And he just kind of jots down some things. Because I found that for me, I like list building so much that I'll jump to another one before I've actually really pushed this one to see, is there a tweak I could make that makes it even better? But I think it is keeping track of what upgrades are not really being used, especially if you look across your record of, I flew against aces, I flew against beef, I flew against ordnance, whatever, what things came into play and what didn't. And so like that shift of making the U-wing and the gauntlet both being bad targets because one's regen and one's straining you, that's probably a direction that I would look at after a few times if this was working, but maybe needed a little bit more of a boost. That's probably a direction I would go to kind of push that even further. So then all 4 ships have some kind of negative to shooting at them.
Yeah. So as we move on, I think one of the points you kind of brought up is you like to jump lists. And I don't think anybody at the locals would disagree with that. I definitely know you like to jump lists. You did it for Gen Con, so there you go.
I only brought 4.
Oh my God. And that's fine because that's fine. We could pick on you a little bit, but we can also pick on me because I'm known for not picking my list before going to an event, especially online events, until like the wee hours of the morning beforehand. And you can ask JG, how many times did I try to swerve to back to droids? Like, and I'm dead serious. You want to know how much? You know what I packed with me too, Corey? Was a droid list. Just so you know. I did the same thing. I brought a droid list because I was like, I'm gonna swerve. I know I'm gonna do it, and then I didn't, and I felt better that I didn't. But let's talk a little bit about when is it time, to when is it time to put a list to bed or not put it to bed, right? Because I think the big deal becomes is we spend all this time testing, but how long do you actually test before you give up on it? And I will say, so I'm going to say, and this is honest truth, I was running an FO list, not quite the exact same thing as Crispy was. Before Crispy's list was popular, I was running something in local with a couple of bombers and not the Electro Chafe Clouds, but with, all those proxies and things like that. And the Rebel Alphas nuked my bombers enough times that after 2 games, I dumped out those lists. I was done. I was like, screw this. I'm not running this anymore. And maybe it's just because Alpha Rebel Strike, and I didn't know how to run against that, was just so good. Like, oh, we're going to slow roll. And then by the time I got in there, they were already half dead. And blah, 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 blah. But the question becomes is, when is it time to say, hey, this list doesn't work, I need to go back to the drawing board? Or, hey, I'm going to completely just shelve this list because I was way too stoned or drunk that night to say this is a good list.
So I'll start off with this one here. So there's a few criteria for each version, right? So the first one is how the list feels when you're playing it, right? There's a few lists that when you're playing it, you get a feel for it. It could be good, it could be bad, but it doesn't feel as good for you because you don't have a natural comfort with that particular style list or the ships that are being flown. So it feels like you're making more of an effort to try to get used to that list or acclimated to that list, whether it's good or not. And ultimately, if you don't feel comfortable or have fun playing that list, then at that point, once you get that sensation, it doesn't matter whether you've gotten 2 games in or if you've gotten 10 games in. it's probably best to drop that list, because as time goes on, and if you have a bad game either due to dice or a single mistake, just having that negative experience happen, especially in a tournament setting, can completely derail you for the entire tournament after that. So if you get that sensation early on for a list, then at that point stop playing it. If you want to come back to it later on when it's not like a tournament type environment and give it a different another go and see if you feel different about that list, then great, that's absolutely great. But at that point, if this is for like a tournament setting, just dump it immediately. The other part of it is, if you do find a list that you feel comfortable with, either with the chassis or the pilot ability that you're flying with, um, I subscribe to the Nick Sperry method. Run it a minimum 20 matches, to give it a good feel, to see what upgrades make sense for that, how what openings you have for that particular list, and you could get a really good sense from there, how you want to tweak that list, right? For instance, the one that we were developing for a while, I was playing for a solid probably month and a half, uh, just tweaking that list constantly, moving different upgrades to different ships and stuff. I mean, in the early iteration of the list that you flew for Gen Con, I had Maul on Boba instead of Kanan, and I just had Kanan with Compassion and Ahsoka just because she was a cheaper crew and I can get that Compassion out for the just in case. But as the evolution of that list came through with me playing it constantly, making that decision to put Maul and Kanan was absolutely fantastic. Just in case Kanan takes those shots, having the ability to regen that force, adding chaff clouds and false transponder codes onto Boba was a fantastic way to make Boba a more defensive type um, ship to help deal with those alpha strike lists that rely on target locks to make sure that they can't use those locks early on to take out your ships and give you a chance to either destroy those ships or cripple them in the event. And then just making the modifications on what type of bombs you're carrying on Iman. All those tweaks that you make to a list only come after you've played so many games with that particular list that you get to feel your own personal efficiencies, what you feel that you're going to remember, what triggers you're going to remember, and that helps you adjust your strategy to all different type of lists, because there's not going to be one single list that's going to conquer the meta overall, because there's always going to be a weakness somewhere along the line to it. But in those cases, it's going to matter how you react to that particular matchup. That's going to be important. And if you know your list and what upgrades you have just by muscle memory, then you have a better chance.
Yeah.
So Cory, how many times do you play the list? And here, let me throw a little wrinkle in it to make it a little bit more wrinkly for you. Do you test lists against meta lists, or are you testing lists against anything?
So I'll be honest here. JJ mentioned the feel. That's my number one thing is if it doesn't feel right, I drop it very quickly. I think the other thing, just real quick to throw in there, is the more out there you make a list, I think the scarier it is to get out there and say, like you mentioned 20 times. Like for me, that would scare the crap out of me, because I get 2 matches a weekend. So that's 10 weeks. Unless I happen to get on channel, that I'm going to be flying the same list. And that list, to be honest, might be crap from the get-go. Like its bones might be crap, right?
Yeah.
And so it's tough to kind of gauge where that is. I think if it feels good, I'll usually get excited about a list and fly it a few times. Then if I get walloped, a lot of times it'll kind of get set on the side and I'll have to think about it. Like what did that? What was the reason for that? Did I fly like crap? There's so many different factors, right? The objectives now. Did I fly like crap? Did my dice, as much as I don't like to blame dice, there are times when dice just fail, right? You got double mods and you roll 3 blanks after 2 rolls. That's dice failing you, right? You can't get around that.
No damage to Boba.
Yeah. And so, you got to look at all those factors. And I think that's where the other thing that came from Gen Con was me looking at, I brought a list that I really liked. I don't know if I'll keep flying it, but I did realize I need to get familiar with a few more lists more than I have been. And I think the thing about that Zach said, does about taking notes and kind of spending more time on it, the Nick Sperry method of playing it more. I don't know about 20, but I would agree that I need to get more experience with it, trying against more things, which is a challenge because our local meta is pretty small, and we fly certain things, and there's a lot of things we don't fly. And so then it's kind of looking for those opportunities to go out, on stream and play against people who are flying those things that are doing it.
So I do have a question, Corey. Now, for me, I don't always get the opportunity to play online as much as I can, and playing locally is basically non-existent for me right now. How much do you? For me, what I like to do, at least when I'm starting off for a list, I tend to use fly casual a lot.
Okay.
Playing against AI. Now, I will say with a caveat that fly casual does not have all the upgrades available, right? And it also does not have the best AI as well because it's just by design. But do you ever consider using that to at least get a feel for the list first versus an AI opponent and see how it performs? Even if you don't have all the upgrades, just to like have at least the majority of the upgrades on that particular ship and kind of work that way.
I haven't. Sometimes I will set up by myself and on TTS and set up my list and kind of practice maneuvers, practice getting, where is the list kind of coming together? How do I want it to function and fly? And so I think that's a really smart thing to do, and I probably should do it more. Just kind of getting that feeling of how does that stuff run together, right? Like you get different initiatives and different placements of things. So I think that's a really super smart thing to do. I just haven't done it. I think the other thing that I've been railing on our local group about and we're pushing harder on is not playing through a whole game, like going and being okay with, hey, we got 15 minutes into this game. We got the first couple engagements done. I think I can maybe pull this out, but it's going to be a slog, right? Let's reset and try this again.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple guys, one in particular that in our group that is like, well, you don't know if you really lost it. You don't know how to pull a game out of the bag if you never fly to the end. I'm not saying don't ever do that, but I definitely think you're losing a lot of time in preparing for an event by not resetting after the first 2-3 rounds of engagement and just being like, let's do this again, because you could get 2 or 3 of those in an hour versus one whole game and be like, I just got beat the last 20 minutes. Like that doesn't help me at all. So
yeah. The other thing I would recommend as well is for Heroes of the Atari Cluster, there's an AI system that's developed that you can actually download on your phone for like an AI. And the better part, or the reason why that's a little bit better than playing on fly casual, for instance, is that the AI system for Heroes of the Atari Cluster does make checks to see to check for obstacles along the way. So it gives you rules to adjust the heading or the bearing of the maneuver if there's an obstacle that's on the way. Because obviously, a real life human wouldn't like dial a 4 straight right into a rock, right? It would adjust by doing like a 3 bank to get around it. And then there's different steps of actions that's available for that particular chassis that you can do to help either point your ship towards an opponent or take a defensive mod if it's not possible. And I think that's a good way to practice solo. And that's something that I did very early on when I was starting to get into the tournament scene. And that definitely helped me out a lot to consider different options that my opponent might be making in order for me to adjust my own flying towards them.
Yeah. And I will throw out there too, and this hopefully helps you guys out too, is playing on stream, I would say, is one of the best ways to test a list as well as fly a list and see what it can do. Having all these people rip on you for what the stupid maneuver that you did, and the the casters also being like, that was dumb. Why did he go there? Why didn't he do this? I have learned so much from playing online on stream of just like, wow, I really screwed that up. And it's a great way to step back and look at a match and look at a list of like, what is it capable of? What's going on? So I think taking a list, especially one that's kind of out there, and playing on stream, you're going to have people like, we've already got people like, oh, Cassian's better, or, get rid of this, or don't do this, or whatever. At least considering those things is fantastic, right? Like, I agree, Cassian's a fantastic U-wing. I just feel like right now, Cassian, you lose too many points, loadout points, because you put Leia on it, and then what else do you do with it? Give them Notorious and false transponder codes or something, then, and with Leia, 100%, or K2SO. But playing on stream is another way to really look at a list and decide, is it good? Because you're playing against metas that are outside of your own. And also you're getting critiques and from the chat as well as from whoever's commentating. And it's nerve-wracking at first, but once you get used to it, it is fantastic. And I can't stress it enough.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Anything else we want to talk about list building before we wrap it up here? I think we've covered quite a bit of distance tonight.
I would just say try stuff. Like just try stuff. Like don't look at stuff as being solved. We talked about chaff clouds. When those first came out, people were like, these are crap. And now they're freaking everywhere. Like, I know people laugh at my Gonk droid, but if you can find a place to do it, regen has always been good, right? If you can do it and make it work, try it. Just get out there and try. That's what makes X-Wing. There's so many cards out there, and there's nothing wrong with net listing if you need to or want to, or you don't like to do that. But try building something, try doing something, pulling a whole piece out and trying something new in there that maybe fits your style, if that's, you want to ease into it. But list building is ridiculously fun in X-Wing if you let yourself do it. Nothing is solved right now. And every couple months we're going to see something new crazy coming out. So just give it a try.
Yeah. JJ?
Yeah, and the same thing too. Like, if you take a look at the big tournaments that is coming up, the next big one here is going to be NovaCon in November. And if you have any local tournaments that are coming up for them, practice your list. So whatever you're planning or you think that you might be wanting to take over to Nova, or you have a few lists, start practicing now. Get those reps in now. The more time you spend prepping, if you're planning to go to one of those big tournaments events to try to qualify for Worlds, now is the time now to get those reps in and get a feel for that list and see how you feel with it and how the upgrades you have on it works out, and that way you can make adjustments. There's nothing like the worst feeling in the world than being unsure about your list the night before the event, and you're like, you gotta pull the trigger on something, and you just do it, and you do bad at an event, and because you felt like you didn't have enough time to test that particular change out, and you feel like you could have done better if you went the other way. And there's no worse feeling in the world, like for me, when I'm going through that type of situation.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Cory and JJ, tonight for having the list building conversation with me. I think it's an important piece, and when we talk about how do we help new players, how do we help, other people going out, and maybe you're out there struggling with list building, you're welcome to post it in the chat here, or you're welcome to go on to our Discord if you would like. And if you go into the Discord, you can find a channel that will give you, there will be a channel that will give you list building. And if you post a list and you want us to critique it or have a conversation about it, we'll do that. Like, that's actually probably one of the funner segments we never get to do because we don't get enough interaction from people that want help with lists. So if you want to talk about lists or you want to post something crazy, and yeah, JJ and I are not Worlds qualifiers yet, but it doesn't mean that we still don't understand the logic, and it still doesn't mean it's not fun to go through those lists. And I think that's kind of the big thing. A lot of like podcasts will do that. And yeah, maybe we're just borrowing from another podcast, but I find it fun. I find it fun to critique other people's lists because people come up with things. And if somebody had shown me Seventh Sister ahead of the time, I would probably have been one win ahead of time, farther down the road than I am now. So anyway, with that being said, again, thank you so much. Next week, we'll be back. JJ is going to be off next week because JJ is moving to another state, which seems crazy to me, but I've only moved from one state to one other state when I was 15, and I guess I'm just one of those set in stone people that live in one city for the rest of my life.
This is like my 5th time in my life.
You're
so, yeah.
That's crazy, buddy.
Yeah,
that's just
know,
crazy. That's crazy. So next week JJ will not be on. So we are going to, as of now, we're having Nick from 312, and then I will, if Charles is unavailable, I will have somebody else join me as well. To be talking about a whole bunch of crazy stuff. I don't know. Is there a tournament coming up next weekend? I don't think there is there?
No, it's the following week that we have the GSP.
Yeah, so GSP is the next one that we have. In 2 weeks, we will be having another tournament discussion. I guess maybe not a tournament discussion, but another, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you call it, but we'll do another list breakdown. And again, next week I'll probably bring in a little bit more of my statistics to kind of talk through different factions for people and stuff like that. So,
all right,
yeah, XCC finals will be 2 weeks, and so I will say like in 2 weeks JJ might be off again, but we will be discussing the XCC finals, especially if we get to stream them. So that's what I'm hoping we get to stream them. And I'll be very tired and very, very extremely tired that weekend.
Yeah, they're like 2 in the morning, right?
Yeah,
they start at 2 in the morning. God.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it'll be me getting Friday and getting out of work, and then going and taking a nap, and then getting up and setting up stream for the whole day. So I don't know. Maybe Cory will join me to stream at 2 a.m. in the morning. I heard he loves to be up early.
I don't know who told you that.
Anyway, so thank you all so much. We will be back. Later this week, we will have more Nickel City games on any day that Greg is not streaming, and then we will be back next week with Nick from 312 Squadron. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you guys.
See ya.